영어로 듣는 리처드 도킨스의 이기적 유전자.
Hello everyone. Today, we will explore one of the most influential and controversial books in modern biology, Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, published in 1976. This book does not argue that humans are inherently selfish, but rather offers a revolutionary perspective on evolution, stating that the fundamental unit of selection is the gene itself, not the organism or the species. We will break down the book's core arguments into four key areas: the gene's eye view, aggression and kinship, sex and parental investment, and the meme. 1. The gene's eye view, the replicator and the vehicle, the problem of altruism. Dawkins starts by addressing a long-standing question in biology: if natural selection favors the fittest individuals, why do we observe acts of altruism in nature? For instance, why does a worker bee sacrifice its life for the hive? The traditional view that selection works for the good of the species is, according to Dawkins, incorrect and biologically unsound. The fundamental unit of selection. Dawkins posits that the entity that matters in evolution is not the group or the individual, but the gene. Genes as replicators. Genes are segments of DNA that replicate themselves, fighting for survival across generations. Organisms as vehicles. Individuals, you, me. The bee are merely vehicles or survival machines built by the genes to carry and propagate them. We are temporary vessels. The gene is potentially immortal. The ultimate goal of a gene is to make copies of itself, and any behavior exhibited by the vehicle, the organism that helps the gene survive and replicate, will be favored by selection. Therefore, behaviors that appear altruistic at the individual level, like a bee dying, are, in fact, acts of gene selfishness. The act increases the probability that the genes shared by the relatives will survive. 2. Aggression, kin selection, and the greenbeard effect. Kin selection, the family. This concept explains apparent altruism toward relatives. A gene's success is measured by the total number of copies that end up in the next generation, since relatives share a high percentage of the same genes. Sacrificing oneself for kin is a genetically selfish act. If I save two of my full siblings, who share 50% of my genes, I have successfully promoted more copies of my genes than if I had survived alone. Dawkins uses J.B.S. Haldane's famous line, "I will lay down my life for 2 brothers or 8 cousins." This principle, called kin selection, developed primarily by W.D. Hamilton, shows that a gene for altruism towards kin can thrive because the recipients of the altruism are likely carrying copies of the gene responsible for the altruistic act. Reciprocal altruism. Altruism is not only limited to family. Dawkins also discusses reciprocal altruism cooperation with non-relatives. This works on the principle, "I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine." This requires memory and the ability to detect and punish cheaters. It is based on a long-term benefit that outweighs the short-term cost. 3. Sexual reproduction and parental investment. The battle of the sexes. Dawkins applies the selfish gene theory to reproductive strategies, introducing the concept of parental investment developed by Robert Trivers. The sexes are different. The fundamental difference between males and females lies in the size of their gamete sex cells. Females produce large, expensive eggs. Males produce small, cheap sperm. Female investment. Since the female typically makes the initial, heavier investment, the egg in gestation, she has more to lose if the offspring dies. This leads to the female being the choosier partner. Male strategies. Males often face a choice. Be a faithful father, investing heavily in one family, or a Casanova mating widely with minimal investment. The conflict between the sexes is an evolutionary struggle where each sex tries to maximize its own gene replication, sometimes at the expense of the other partner. 4. The arrival of the meme. In the final chapter, Dawkins extends the concept of the replicator beyond biology into the realm of human culture, introducing the meme. The meme as a cultural replicator. Just as the gene is the unit of biological information, the meme is the unit of cultural transmission or imitation. Examples of memes: tunes, ideas, catchphrases, clothing, fashions, philosophical concepts, and religious beliefs. Meme survival. Memes compete with one another for space in the human brain, the cultural soup. They replicate through imitation, teaching, and speaking. For example, a catchy song tune, a meme is highly successful if it gets passed from person to person. Evolutionary significance. Dawkins suggests that memes are evolving in a way that is analogous to gene evolution, but on a much faster cultural timescale. This concept allows Dawkins to argue that while we are programmed by our selfish genes, our cultural evolution memes gives us the power to rebel against them. Conclusion. The selfish gene fundamentally reframed evolution, making the gene the protagonist. By viewing organisms as temporary vehicles, Dawkins provided a powerful, coherent framework for understanding phenomena ranging from aggression to cooperation, and even the transmission of human culture. The life of Richard Dawkins, the author of The Selfish Gene. Now, let's turn our attention to the man behind this radical idea, Clinton Richard Dawkins, evolutionary biologist, ethologist, and one of the world's most prominent public intellectuals. His life is a story of rigorous academic inquiry combined with a fearless commitment to public advocacy for science and reason. 1. Early life and education 1941 to 1960s. Richard Dawkins was born in 1941 in Nairobi, British Kenya, where his father was a colonial civil servant. His family returned to England when he was 8. He was educated at Balliol College, Oxford, where he read zoology. Crucially, he went on to pursue his DPhil, under the supervision of the Nobel Prize-winning ethologist Nicholas Tinbergen at Oxford. Tinbergen was a pioneer in studying animal behavior, and working under him instilled in Dawkins a lifelong passion for understanding the ultimate, evolutionary reasons behind behavior. His early doctoral work focused on decision-making in animals, particularly chickens. 2. The formative years and the first masterpiece, 1970s. After working as an assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley, Dawkins returned to Oxford in 1970 to take up a lecturership. The early 1970s were a period of intense theoretical development in evolutionary biology, particularly regarding kin selection W. D. Hamilton and reciprocal altruism Robert Trivers. Dawkins' genius lay in his ability to clearly synthesize and popularize these complex, gene-centered ideas. In 1976, he published The Selfish Gene. The book was a massive success, not only among scientists but also with the general public. It earned him international fame and immediately positioned him as a gifted, scientific writer, a master of metaphor and elegant prose. 3. Academic career and later scientific works, 1980s, 1990s. Following the success of his first book, Dawkins continued to expand his vision of gene-centered evolution. The Extended Phenotype, 1982. This was Dawkins's most scientifically rigorous work. It argued that a gene's influence is not limited to the organism's body, the phenotype, but can extend outside of it. For example, a caddisfly larva's stone case or a beaver's dam. This work provided the theoretical bedrock for the arguments presented in The Selfish Gene. The Blind Watchmaker, 1986. In this book, Dawkins directly addressed the perceived complexity of life, offering a masterful explanation of how gradual, cumulative natural selection can create complex biological structures without the need for a designer. This book firmly established his reputation as a passionate advocate for Darwinism and a critic of creationism. In 1995, Dawkins was appointed as the Charles Simonyi Professor for the Public Understanding of Science at Oxford, a position he held until his retirement in 2008. 4. The Public Intellectual and Atheism Advocacy, 2000s present. While Dawkins had always been a vocal atheist, his focus shifted more explicitly to the public advocacy of atheism and scientific rationality in the 21st century. The God Delusion, 2006. This became his best-selling work. It makes a forceful argument that belief in a supernatural creator is a delusion and advocates for scientific reasoning and secularism. The book cemented his role as one of the four horsemen of new atheism. Public debate and advocacy. Dawkins has since become a highly visible, and sometimes controversial, figure in public discourse, engaging in debates worldwide and using his platform to promote critical thinking and oppose religious fundamentalism. Despite his retirement from his professorship, Richard Dawkins remains an active writer, speaker, and defender of science. His core legacy is the clear, compelling, and often provocative way he presents the intricate logic of evolution to millions, making the gene's eye view an indelible part of modern thought.
Thank you for joining us.
The end.